Hello, travelers and monster catchers abound. I'm Stelliferous, and this is a Monster Catchers Journal podcast. Today's episode is about Geribeak. The Inado Desert stretched out before me, an endless sea of golden sand and jagged red cliffs. The heat shimmered under Nibiru's twin suns, distorting light. Sparse patches of glassroot shrubs, their crystalline leaves sharp as blades, clung to the cracked ground. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional whistle of wind carving through the rocky dunes. I adjusted my glyph compass, its pulsing blue light flickering erratically. Geribeak was close. For weeks I had been tracking this elusive glyph, a towering fusion of giraffe and ostrich, its powerful legs built for speed, its curved beak strong enough to crush stone. But what made it truly legendary was its feathered mirage cloak. An ability that let it bend light, vanishing into the desert like a living mirage. Most monster catchers had tried and failed to capture it. Some swore it wasn't real. I had studied the Inado Desert's records, followed the shifting migration patterns, and listened to the old wanderers who had seen it only for a moment before it disappeared. Today I would not blink. I crouched low, running my fingers through the warm, shifting grains. The hoof claw prints were fresh. Stretching in long strides across the dunes, Geribeak had been here minutes ago. A sudden ripple in the air caught my attention, a distortion, like heat waves rising from the sand. My pulse quickened, then silence. No wind, no distant calls of desert creatures, nothing. Geribeak was watching me. Slowly, I reached into my satchel and pulled out a handful of stormroot dust, a fine glowing powder that clung to movement and energy. In a swift motion, I threw it into the air. The dust swirled and then stuck to something huge. The outline of Geribeak appeared before me, a towering, elegant figure with long, sinewy legs and a gracefully arched neck. His feathers shimmered like liquid gold, flickering between visibility and complete transparency. His golden eyes locked onto mine, intelligent and unreadable. For a heartbeat, we stared at each other. Then it bolted. Trying to tell you guys just how my encounter with Geribeak went, I think I'm having a little bit of trouble letting it come out fluently. I'm very sorry if I mess up on my words, and I hope that you guys will enjoy this true tale of how I caught Geribeak. Geribeak moved like a desert storm, fast, unpredictable, unstoppable. Its feet barely touched the sand as it glided over the dunes, kicking up spirals of dust behind it. I sprinted after it, heart pounding. My rift boots hummed with energy, boosting my strides, but even then I was barely keeping up. Geribeak veered toward the cracked mesa, a treacherous expanse of uneven stone that jutted from the sand like the ribs of a buried giant. If it made it past the cliffs, it would vanish again, into the desert, and I would lose it. Not this time. I reached into my belt and grabbed a phase snare, a special trap designed for speed-based glyphs. It was the only glyph that I could use on this kind of glyph. So, anyways, it was a special trap designed for speed-based glyphs. Timing was everything. I had to throw it at just the right moment. Geribeak leaped onto a rock ledge, its golden feathers flickering. It was seconds away from disappearing. I threw the snare. The air crackled as the device unfurled, releasing an electromagnetic net that wrapped around Geribeak's legs. The creature let out a sharp, almost offended squawk as it stumbled, its body flickering between visible and invisible. I rushed forward, placing my glyphid on the ground. The ancient symbols etched into its surface began to glow, pulling in the energy of the trapped creature. And just as I was about to capture the creature, he got loose. And in a swift moment, Geribeak had broken my phase snare, so I had to try another phase snare. So, reaching into my satchel, I grabbed out a second phase snare, but it missed. The net flew wide, catching nothing but air. I skidded to a halt, breath burning in my chest. My boots hummed, then whined, out of charge. I collapsed to my knees, sand pouring between my fingers. High on a distant ridge I saw it, Geribeak, a golden ghost against the red sky. It paused for a heartbeat, looking back, and then vanished into the heat haze. I had failed. The glyphid in my satchel stayed closed, silent and empty. I stayed in the desert long after Geribeak disappeared. The silence returned heavy and thick. I watched the sun dip its light longer and longer, because I know that the suns, they never come down from the sky. The suns and the moons of Nibiru just sit there, right there in the middle of the sky. But anyways, so casting long shadows over the dunes, I let myself feel the frustration, the ache of all the weeks, the planning, the close call. But while I was sitting there feeling sorry for myself, I decided I was going to catch him. It was not going to be a loss. In one swift movement, I grabbed my glyphid, the backup device I carried for emergency captures, and slammed it into the sand. I wouldn't lose Geribeak, not now, not after everything. The glyphid blinked once, then fizzled. The screen cracked, the runes flickered weakly, before vanishing entirely, broken. My heart sank. I barely had time to react before Geribeak let out a deep, resonant cry, a sound like wind tearing through hollow stone. And then it charged. It came at me with terrifying speed, every step shaking the sand beneath my feet. I scrambled back, the heat and fear mixing in my chest like fire. Its golden beak glinted in the sunlight, and its long legs moved with the momentum of a landslide. But it didn't strike. The last possible second, Geribeak swerved, kicking up a spiral of hot wind and sand that blinded me. I stumbled, coughing, shielding my eyes. When the dust settled, Geribeak was gone again. I sat down in the sand, glyphid still in hand, broken and useless. I had been so sure, so certain that I could outsmart the desert, outmatch one of the most elusive glyphs on Nibiru. But sometimes the wind doesn't care how prepared you are. Sometimes the wind humbles you. And maybe that's the point. Now you might think that's where my run-in with Geribeak ends, but you'd be wrong. I went back the next week. Something about the way it looked at me right before it vanished into the dunes stuck with me. That charge doesn't mean to harm. It was a warning, or maybe a test. But a test of what? So I returned, this time, not as a hunter, but as a student. No snare, no broken glyphid, just me. A repaired compass, and a small satchel of offerings. Mirage berries, sun-cracked minerals, and a polished mirror stone, said to reflect one's spirit. I camped at the edge of the cracked mesa, where the wind never stops whispering and the sand sings strange lullabies at night. Days passed, I saw nothing, but on the fourth morning, just as the suns began their ever-present light, I woke to silence. No birds, no wind, no sound. Just the soft crunch of sand. I turned slowly. There it was, Geribeak. Not cloaked in mirage this time, fully visible. Golden feathers glittering like firelight. Its long neck tilted curiously, head cocked, as if it was studying me this time. No fear, no chase, just recognition. I reached into my satchel and gently rolled a mirage berry onto the sand between us. Geribeak stepped forward, slowly and deliberate. It sniffed the fruit, then looked at me. Then it lowered its head, not submission, but respect. And then it was gone again, leaving only a single iridescent feather in the sand where it had stood. I didn't catch Geribeak, but I think something even rarer happened. I was seen by it, not as a threat, not as a predator, but as a fellow traveler, and maybe that's the real cat. After my second encounter with Geribeak, I didn't head to another hunt. I returned home to the towering spires of Luan Academy, where the twin suns filtered through stained glass and the halls hummed with whispers of ancient glyph lore. My boots were still caked in desert sand, when I stepped into Professor Orion's office. The air smelled of parchment, old tea, and ozone. Exactly how it always did. Not my favorite thing, to be exact, but The professor sat at his desk, his back to me, fingers gliding through glowing glyph protections, floating midair. Without turning, he said, "You didn't capture it, did you?" I let the single shimmering feather fall onto his desk. He turned, finally meeting my eyes. "Ah, so you did find it." I nodded. "I found Geribeak twice." I told him everything: the broken glyphid, the charge, the second journey, the offering, the silence, the trust. He listened quietly, only interjecting once to mutter, "Fascinating." As I described the moment, Geribeak lowered its head. When I finished, he tapped a long, knotted finger on the desk. "You've just confirmed what the old legend only hinted at." He stood, walking slowly to one of the shelves. He pulled down a dusty tome, bound in cracked leather, pages etched with sunny, faded ink. Geribeak isn't just a speed-based glyph. It's a sentient bound, rare, ancient, some of the first glyphs forged under Nibiru's twin suns were given the ability to choose their bond, not through force, not through capture, but through connection. He turned the book so I could see an old sketch. Geribeak, wings outstretched, neck arched, eyes glowing. They were the watchers, the judges. If one deems you worthy, you may follow. Or they may follow you, sorry. My heart pounded so. "It can join me? But not like the others." Orion smiled faintly. "No, Geribeak must want to walk beside you. It isn't bound by a pyramid, Stelliferous. It's bound by trust." I looked down at the feather in my hand, feeling its warmth hum gently against my skin. I think it is watching me." Professor Orion nodded. "Then don't hurt anyone anymore, or hunt it anymore." "Then what do I do?" "You wait," he simply said. "You learn, you grow. Let it see who you truly are." This wasn't my finest moment, but in the next moments I cried a bit, and threw a little bit of a hissy fit. "But I want to catch it now," I cried. The words burst out of me before I could stop them. My voice cracked, echoing off the tall stone walls of the Academy archives. I wiped angrily at my face, but the tears kept coming, hot, bitter, blurring the shimmering feather in my hand. Professor Orion turned slowly from the shelves. He didn't look surprised in the least. He didn't scold me. He just nodded. "It's not fair," I whispered. "I've trained, I've studied, I've chased it through a sandstorm. I nearly got trampled. I earned this. I deserve it." He stepped forward, his eyes ancient and star bright, softening. "Wanting it doesn't make you weak," he said. "Crying doesn't make you wrong. What you feel is valid, Stelliferous, but sometimes the wild doesn't care about what we've earned. It cares about who we are in the waiting." I clenched my fist. "I don't want to wait." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Then don't." That night I stood alone at the Academy's sky bridge, the wind tugging at my coat, the stars like fireflies caught in the web of the night. Sorry, I messed up on my words there, guys, but I keep doing it. I held the broken glyphid in my hand and the golden feather in the other, and I made a decision. If Geribeak wouldn't come to me, then I'd go back. Not to beg, not to plead, but to try again. To prove that I wasn't giving up. Not on the glyph, not on myself. I cried today. I broke down in front of one of the most respected professors in the galaxy, and I'm not ashamed because I'm Stelliferous. And tomorrow, I return to the desert, not to wait, but to catch Geribeak. No matter what. Well, guys, third time's the charm. Because this is not even where the story ends, because I went back to the Inado Desert a third time to try and catch the Geribeak. The Inado Desert greeted me like an old rival, you know. The wind was sharper, the sun hotter, the sand somehow heavier beneath my boots. My heart pounded louder than the wind, and I could still hear my voice from the night in the archives, breaking, trembling, full of pain. I wanted to catch it. I needed to. This wasn't about proving anything to Professor Orion or to the other catchers who whispered about failed missions. This wasn't even about the academy anymore. This was about me and Geribeak. The third time, the final time, I returned with no backup, no face sneer, no fancy tech, just one repaired glyphid, reforged by my own hands and my own 2 feet. I followed the patterns again, found the fresh tracks, traced the shimmering lights across the horizon, and when I saw the flickering of lights rippling across the dunes, I didn't throw anything, I ran. Geribeak saw me. I know it did, and like the wind itself it moved, graceful, untouchable, mocking. The chase was on again. I don't know how long we ran. My boots were burning, my lungs were on fire, my vision blurred, but I didn't stop. Geribeak glanced back, and that was my opening. I placed my glyphid and powered it with a pulse crystal I'd found buried deep in the cracked mesa. The moment it hit the ground, the device roared to life, forming a glowing triangle that shimmered with blue light, not a trap, an invitation. Geribeak slowed, and for one impossible moment it stepped into the light. The glyphid locked, the triangle snapped shut. Energy surged through the sand like a shockwave. The wind howled, the desert roared, and then silence. The night faded. The glyphid was sealed, my hands trembling as I picked it up. I laughed, I cried, and through exhausted breaths, I whispered, "Third time's a charm." I did it. I finally did it. Geribeak is mine, not because I forced it, because I didn't give up, and because I earned its respect, and maybe because it saw something in me too. This is Stelliferous signing off, with sand in my teeth, sweat in my eyes, and Geribeak by my side. To all the travelers and monster catchers out there, don't let failure bury you. Let it shape you. And remember, sometimes the third time isn't just the charm. It's the beginning of something greater. I mean, I have Geribeak now. He's a very amazing glyph, and, well, when he meets the other glyphs, I think he'll be very happy. Actually, you know what? We're not going to get off air yet, because I want to tell you about how he reacted in the sanctuary. Catching Geribeak was one thing, getting him to settle into life in my pyramid house and sanctuary, well, let's just say he's not exactly a team player. Our pyramid house, my sanctuary, my home, where Zena and I live with all our glyphs, is usually a peaceful, glowing haven built with golden sandstone and shimmering energy panels. It hums with a soft, ancient warmth. Light filters through crystal skylights. Wind chimes sing with enchanted notes. Glyphs snap in sunbeams, snack in shared gardens, and occasionally get into friendly mischief. It's calm, cozy, beautiful. Geribeak hates it. The moment I released him into the high atrium, Geribeak stretched his long neck, looked around, and let out a shrill, offended squawk that echoed off the pyramid's inner walls. He stomped past the Zen sand garden, ignored the sun-baked perch I made just for him, and glared at our communal berry table like it had insulted his bloodline. Senna tried to cheer him up with some golden mirage berries and a feather massage. She's dramatic, but she means well. But he just flared his wings and knocked the bowl straight into the reflecting pool. Now he's claimed the very tip of the pyramid skylight as his personal throne, roosting up there and watching us like some ancient guardian with serious attitude. He screeches at dawn, every dawn, loud enough to rattle my tea mugs. He glares at the other glyphs like they're beneath him, except for Pickles, my ghost dog, who he tolerates only because Pickles floats and doesn't talk. Even the pyramid's energy sensors seem confused. The automatic sunlight adjusters dim when he walks by. I swear one of the stone doors shut itself when he approached. I tried to talk to him yesterday, heart to heart. Just me, a desert legend, and a plate of mirage berries. He stared at me, huffed, then turned and popped off the ledge, right onto Zena's meditation rug. Geribeak is moody, sun-loving, attention-demanding, feathered drama king. and I absolutely adore him. He doesn't love the pyramid yet, but this is his home now, our home. In one way or another, he'll come to see that, even if it takes 100 mirage berries, 1,000 sun baths, and several deep cleanings of Zena's favorite rug. This is Stelliferous, signing off from a pyramid full of love, lights, and one very cranky desert glyph. Stay curious, stay patient, and maybe check your roof for angry birds. And remember, one failure does not mean that you should weep. One failure means that you should take it and make it into lemonade, meaning you should take it and turn it around and make it something good. This is Stelliferous saying goodbye.